Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling unheard? Like you were talking, but nobody was really listening.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
It's like your thoughts just kind of vanished, right?
It's the worst.
Well, today we're diving deep into a technique that's designed to make sure that doesn't happen.
Ooh, okay.
It's called heard, seen, respected. We'll call it HSR for short.
Okay, I like it, HSR.
And it comes from this really cool set of tools called Liberating Structures.
Liberating Structures.
Yeah, they're all about making group interactions way more effective and,
right.
well, liberating.
I can get behind that. So what's the deal with this HSR? How does it make sure people actually feel heard?
Well, that's what's so fascinating about it. It combines a really simple structure with this really deep dive into human connection.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Simple structure, deep connection.
Oh.
Tell me more.
All right, so first, paint me a picture. What does an HSR session actually look like?
Okay, so picture a circle of chairs, people facing each other.
Okay.
No tables, no barriers in between, just people. That's it. That's the basic setup.
Huh.
And the beauty of it is, within that simple framework, there's this really clear sequence of steps. Everyone takes turns, and there are time limits to keep things moving.
Ah, so that's how you make sure everyone gets a chance to share.
Exactly. Everyone knows they'll have their turn to speak and to be heard, and that just creates this amazing sense of safety and equality.
So no one's dominating the conversation or getting cut off before they've finished their thought.
Exactly. It's like you're creating this container where vulnerability is welcomed and respected.
I can see how that would lead to more open and honest communication, but let's get to the heart of it. Why are these feelings of being heard, seen, and respected so important? I mean, isn't that just common sense?
Well, it might seem like common sense, but honestly, think about how often you actually feel truly heard.
Yeah.
Not just like someone's listening to your words, but they're really present with you, you know?
Right.
We all crave that feeling of being understood. And when it's missing, it can create this sense of isolation and disconnect.
Oof. Yeah, I feel that.
And HSR brings that need to the forefront and offers a way to address it directly.
So you're saying it's easy to take listening for granted.
Totally.
But when someone really listens to you without judgment, it can be incredibly validating.
Oh, absolutely. And it goes beyond just feeling good, you know?
Yeah.
The source material actually talks about how this feeling of being heard can be incredibly cathartic, even
Wow.
healing. There's a sense of release that comes with simply expressing yourself and knowing that someone is truly present with your experience.
That's interesting. Are there any real-world examples of how that healing aspect plays out? Like, have you seen it in action?
Yeah, actually. There's this story in the material about a team that was going through a really rough time. Lots of conflict, resentment, communication has basically broken down.
Ooh.
And they decided to try an HSR session. What happened was incredible. People started sharing their stories, their frustrations, their pain, and just the act of being heard without interruption or judgment seemed to release some of that pent-up tension.
So they didn't even try to solve the problems, they just focused on listening to each other.
Right.
And did that actually lead to any lasting change?
Well, what's amazing is that by creating that space for listening, they were able to move past all the blame and accusations. They started to see each other as human beings again.
That's huge.
It was. Now, it didn't magically fix everything, but it opened the door for more empathetic and productive communication.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes just feeling understood is the first step towards finding solutions. It's like you have to clear the air before you can start rebuilding, you know?
Exactly. And, this applies not just to teens, but to any relationship where communication has gotten strained.
Yeah, for sure.
Could be with family, friends, even colleagues. HSR offers this powerful way to reconnect on a deeper level.
Okay, so speaking of practical stuff, the source material mentions tips and traps for making sure HSR is used effectively.
Oh yeah, the tips and traps.
So what are some of the key takeaways there? What do we need to know?
Well, one of the most important tips is for the person telling the story. They emphasize that the story you share should be the first one that pops into your head. Not necessarily the most traumatic or the most emotionally charged. It's about finding a story that feels safe to share in that moment.
Okay, so it's not about digging up all the deepest, darkest secrets. It's more about creating a comfortable starting point.
Right.
Got it.
And then there's this really important tip for the listener. They say, and I'm quoting directly from the source here, when you are the listener, Notice when you form a judgment about what is right or wrong, or when you get an idea about how you can help, then let it go.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying I'm supposed to just sit there and not offer solutions, not give any advice?
It does sound a little counterintuitive, I know.
Yeah, a little.
But the power of HSR really lies in resisting those urges to fix or to judge. By letting them go, you create the space for genuine empathy and understanding.
Okay, I see. So it's about shifting your mindset from, I need to fix this, to, I'm here to listen and understand.
Exactly, and that shift can lead to a totally different kind of listening experience.
I'm starting to get it.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah. Now, there's this one part of the source material that really jumped out at me. It talks about riffs and variations you can do with the basic HSR structure. And one of them, this is interesting, one of them suggests replacing the word respected with loved.
Whoa.
Right? That just feels like a whole other level.
Yeah.
Like a whole other level of vulnerability.
It's definitely a powerful twist, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how often do you truly feel loved in your interactions with others?
Ooh, that's a good one. And to be honest, I'm not sure I'm ready to unpack that one just yet.
It's a big one.
But it does show you how flexible HSR can be and how it can be adapted to explore these different facets of human connection.
Absolutely. And actually, the source material mentions that you can combine HSR with other liberating structures to create even more powerful experiences.
Oh, wow. It's like having a whole toolkit, right?
It is. It's like a toolkit full of techniques for unlocking deeper connection and understanding.
We'll have to do a separate deep dive into those other liberating structures sometime, but for now,
Yeah, for now.
let's focus on HSR and what we've learned today.
Oh.
The source material gives us some specific examples of where it can be used. So let's explore how HSR could actually make a difference in your world.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, so let's start by thinking about your workplace. Have you ever been in a meeting where people are talking but no one's really listening?
Oh, all the time. It's
Yeah.
like everyone's just waiting for their turn to speak, and the actual content of what's being said gets lost in the shuffle.
It's like a game of who can talk the loudest or the longest.
Yep, exactly.
So in that kind of situation, imagine starting the meeting with an HSR session. Instead of jumping right into the agenda, you create a space for people to share their experiences, their perspectives, their concerns.
So it's like setting the tone for a different kind of meeting.
Right. More mindful, more empathetic communication from the very beginning.
I like it.
And think about this.
Yeah.
It can be especially helpful during times of transition or uncertainty.
Oh, definitely.
Like when a company's going through a merger or a big restructuring.
Right, because in those situations, people are feeling anxious, they're unsure about the future.
Exactly. And instead of letting all that anxiety fester, you can use HSR to create a space where people feel heard, seen, and supported.
It's not about pretending you have all the answers.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that it's a difficult time and figuring things out together.
Navigating the unknown together.
Exactly.
I see how that could help build a sense of solidarity and trust, even when everything feels chaotic.
For sure. And it's not just about the workplace, is it?
No, not at all. HSR can be used in any context where you need deeper listening and connection.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like in personal relationships.
Right.
Or even just everyday conversations with friends and family.
Absolutely. Like imagine having dinner with friends, and instead of trying to one-up each other with stories, you take the time to really listen and understand each other's perspectives.
I love that. That could completely shift the energy of the whole evening.
Totally.
It's a good reminder that HSR isn't just some formal technique. It's a way of being, a mindset you can bring to any interaction.
And it all starts with that willingness to pause, to truly listen, and to be present with another person's experience.
So much truth in that. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about the structure of HSR, why it's so powerful, and even some specific examples of how you can use it. What's standing out to you?
Good question.
What's making you think, I could try that?
You know, what strikes me is the simplicity of it all. You don't need any fancy equipment or training. It's really about creating the space, setting the intention, and then just opening yourself up to truly listening.
Yes. And in a world that's so focused on noise and distraction, that's incredibly refreshing, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like hitting the reset button on our usual ways of interacting.
Yeah.
Who knows, maybe if we all embrace this simple practice of heard, seen, or respected, we can start to create a more compassionate and connected world.
No, that's something worth striving for. You know, it's funny.
What?
You mentioned resetting our interactions, and that really resonated with me.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that stuck out in the material was this idea that HSR can be super valuable during times of transition.
Right. Like after a merger or even during those big societal shifts.
Exactly. People are already feeling uncertain and vulnerable. And in those moments, there aren't easy answers or quick fixes. It's not about finding the solution. It's more about acknowledging how complex everything is and just navigating it together.
So instead of trying to force a resolution, you're creating a space to just be with each other's anxieties and fears and hopes.
Yes, all of it, whatever's coming up.
And that's where empathy becomes even more important, right?
Absolutely. It's not about having all the answers. It's about holding space for each other's experiences and recognizing that we're all in this together.
I'm starting to see how HSR could be a powerful tool for building resilience.
Totally.
Both individually and collectively, right?
Yeah. If you can share those difficult emotions in a safe environment, it makes things a little easier to deal with.
Takes away some of the sting.
Right. And by listening to each other's stories, we might even start to notice patterns and shared experiences, things that help us make sense of what's happening.
Okay, so let's get specific. Imagine you're part of a team and your company's going through a huge restructuring.
Okay.
People are anxious, rumors are flying, nobody knows what the future holds. How could HSR help in that situation?
Well, instead of letting that anxiety turn into negativity or blame, you could bring people together for an HSR session. Not to complain or point fingers, but to really share their stories, their fears, and also their hopes for the future.
So they can feel heard and acknowledged during a time when everything feels uncertain?
Yeah, and connected, even when things feel chaotic.
Exactly. And as they listen to each other, they might start to see that they're not so different after all.
Right, they might realize that they share a lot of the same fears.
And there's strength in that, right?
Huge strength.
It's like that saying, a burden shared is a burden halved. HSR creates a space to share those burdens, not in a way that's overwhelming, but in a way that empowers.
Right. And who knows, maybe by hearing each other's stories, they'll even start to see new possibilities, new ways of navigating the transition that they wouldn't have thought of on their own.
Ah, the magic of collective wisdom.
Right.
It emerges when we create space for everyone's perspective.
Exactly. And HSR provides that space. It's not about finding the right answer. It's about expanding our understanding through shared experience.
Which is actually a much more realistic approach to dealing with complex situations.
For sure.
And it brings us back to that idea that empathy removes the blocks to action. It's not about wallowing. It's about using those shared experiences to move forward.
In a more connected and intentional way.
Yes. And to do that, we need to cultivate our capacity for deep listening.
Not just hearing the words, but really tuning in to the emotions.
The unspoken messages.
The underlying needs.
Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone is just to be present with their experience.
To hold space for their pain, their joy, their confusion, without trying to fix anything.
And that is the heart of HSR, isn't it?
I think so. It's a practice in radical empathy. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected,
Yeah.
Our ability to really listen to each other is the key to unlocking a more compassionate and collaborative future.
That's beautiful. We've talked about how HSR can be a powerful tool for teams and organizations, especially during tough times. But what about personal relationships?
Oh, yeah.
Because let's be real, even with the best intentions, we don't always listen as well as we could.
It's true. We all get caught up in our own heads.
How about story?
Sometimes we interrupt. Sometimes we give advice that nobody asked for, and sometimes we completely miss the point of what the other person is trying to say.
It's like we forget that listening is an active process. It's not just about waiting for your turn to talk.
Right. And HSR reminds us that true listening requires presence. It's about putting aside our own agendas and distractions and really giving our full attention to the other person.
So instead of trying to fix their problems or relate by sharing our own experiences, we're just holding space for them to be heard and understood.
Exactly. And that shift could be transformative, not just for the person being heard, but for the listener as well.
Now, I'm curious, how does HSR deal with those times when you do have something important to share? Does it mean you can never offer advice or support?
It's not about silencing yourself or pretending you don't have thoughts and feelings. It's about recognizing that there's a time and a place for everything.
So you're saying there's a difference between giving unsolicited advice and responding to a genuine request for support.
Exactly. And that awareness comes from really listening. When you're fully present, you can sense whether they're looking for solutions or just needing someone to hear them.
So it sounds like HSR is about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Between listening and responding in a way that feels authentic and supportive.
It is, and that balance can actually make relationships stronger because it builds trust and understanding.
So we've talked about how HSR can help us navigate transitions and build stronger relationships.
Hmm.
But let's circle back to those rifts and variations.
Oh,
You mentioned that one variation uses loved instead of respected.
yeah.
I'm really intrigued by that. How would that actually work?
Well, instead of asking someone to tell me about a time when you didn't feel respected, you'd ask, tell me about a time when you didn't feel loved. And that little change in wording can bring up a whole different set of emotions and experiences.
It definitely feels a lot more vulnerable. I imagine those stories would be much more intimate and revealing.
For sure. And that's where the power of this variation is, It lets us explore that deeper need for love and connection.
So how do you think that shift in focus would impact the listening experience?
I think it would require an even greater level of empathy and compassion from the listener. When someone's sharing a story about not feeling loved, they're being really vulnerable.
It's like they're inviting you into their inner world.
Yes.
Their emotional landscape.
And that requires a lot of reverence and respect.
It sounds like a really powerful exercise, but also potentially a challenging one.
Yeah.
What kind of insights could come from exploring this loved version of HSR?
Well, for one, it could help us understand how we experience love and how those experiences have shaped our relationships.
So it's not just about romantic love.
Yeah.
It's about all kinds of love. Feeling loved by family, friends, colleagues, even ourselves.
Exactly. And by sharing those stories, we can see what we have in common, that universal need for love and belonging.
Now, you mentioned that there are other liberating structures that can be used with HSR.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. One that goes well with HSR is called troca consulting. It's basically a brainstorming process for finding solutions to a problem.
So after everyone's had a chance to be heard and understood, you can move into a brainstorming session to generate ideas.
Right. And because you've already built that foundation of empathy and trust through the HSR process, the brainstorming is going to be way more productive and collaborative.
You're creating a synergy between the two structures.
Exactly.
First, you create a safe space for listening and understanding, and then you channel that energy into creative problem solving.
And that's just one example. There are so many other liberating structures that you can combine with HSR. The possibilities are endless.
It's like having this toolkit for improving communication and fostering deeper connection.
And the best part is that anyone can use them.
You don't need any special training.
Yep.
That's amazing.
That's the whole point. They're designed to be accessible and adaptable.
So whether you're trying to improve communication at work, deepen your personal relationships, or just become a better listener, HSR is something you can start using today.
It's true. And the more you practice, the more natural it will become.
It's like developing a muscle, the muscle of empathy and deep listening.
And that's a muscle worth strengthening, don't you think?
Absolutely. Because being able to truly listen is one of the most valuable gifts we can give to ourselves and to each other. We've covered so much in this deep dive.
I know.
From the basic structure of HSR to its potential applications in different situations. What's resonating with you the most? What's really sticking with you?
Honestly, I'm struck by how transformative it can be to simply listen. We often underestimate how powerful it is to just be present with another person's experience. And HSR gives us a framework to do that in a way that feels safe and structured and meaningful.
I agree. It's like HSR gives us permission to slow down, to tune in, and to connect on a deeper level.
In a world that's constantly bombarding us with distractions, that feels really important.
It does. It's like a radical act of resistance.
It is a resistance to all the noise, the superficiality, the disconnect.
And a reminder that true connection is still possible, one conversation at a time. And as we move into the last part of our deep dive, think about how you can bring these ideas into your own life.
Where could deeper listening create the most positive change in your world?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About all the times I've been so caught up in my own head that I haven't really listened.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Especially in a world that's all about speed and efficiency.
Right. Like we're always in a rush, even when we're communicating.
It's true. We interrupt, we finish each other's sentences, we try to multitask while someone's talking to us.
It's like we've forgotten how to just be present.
And HSR reminds us that being present is a gift for both people.
The giver and the receiver.
Exactly. And that gift, that presence, can have this ripple effect. Imagine what the world would be like if empathy and understanding were at the heart of all our communication.
Wow. That's a big one.
Think about how it would change our relationships, our workplaces, our communities.
That's a beautiful thought. If we can shift from just hearing to truly listening, maybe we can create a more compassionate and connected world.
And it starts with us.
With each of us choosing to listen more deeply.
One conversation at a time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into heard, seen, respected, I feel this sense of hope. It's such a simple idea.
It is.
But it can change the way we interact with each other.
Anyone can do it.
You don't need any special training.
Oh, yeah.
Just 2 chairs and a willingness to listen.
It's true.
I'm thinking about all the ways I can use this in my own life. In my team meetings at work, in conversations with friends and family, even just with strangers I meet throughout the day.
And it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about making that effort to be more present, more attentive.
It's about shifting from what am I going to say next to how can I really understand this person?
And that shift makes all the difference.
Because when we feel heard, we feel seen.
And we feel respected.
And that's how we build true connection.
So the next time you're having a conversation, try it. Take a moment to pause and really listen. You might be surprised by what happens.
When we give each other the gift of being heard.
It's a gift worth giving. See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.